Hey, Summit Daily viewers. This is Antonio Olivero, sports and outdoors editor with the Summit Daily News. I'm here today to chat at home with the homies. Doran Laybourn's new film project he's been working on for a couple years here with a gang of snowboarders from around Colorado, the Summit County area, and one guy who you Summit County, snowboard community members know very well, Chad Otterstrom. So Doran and Chad, thanks for joining me. Can't wait to chat about this snowboard film, which was hosted by Shredbots and produced by Doran and Stoyach, his company. So we got snow, hopefully falling here soon. And, let's just get right into it. Chatting the movie in a bit. But to start off, origin stories for each of you guys as snowboarders, certainly OGs in the community. Chad, bring me way back when you got into snowboarding. What drew you to the sport? Bring me back to kind of where you're from and just paint your origin story picture a little bit. So many people know you now, but they might not know kind of where you came from.
Well, I grew up in Minnesota and was a skier at first, and I've been coming out to Colorado since I believe 1980. I think it was my first trip when I was like 4 years old. And in the late 80s, snowboarding started to come around, and my older brother, was a skateboarder. I was still kind of too young to kick around on a skateboard, and well, not too young in today's age, but um, you know, and so when snowboarding came around, we started seeing snowboarders under the lift, and we're like, we got to get one of those, just because we kind of really like skateboarding. And so then I kind of transferred to skateboard or snowboarding in the late 80s, and then yeah, I snowboarded, through high school up until 1995 is when I moved to Colorado, and then I did the whole amateur scene out here, not really thinking I would make it, just kind of trying to, make it. And things worked out. And then, the late 90s, things really started to kick in. And then a good 15 years there, it was a big blur of just flying around the world and having an awesome time and shredding and going to contests and riding awesome places. And then just over the last, decade or so, I've kind of just, scaled back to just snowboarding for myself and enjoying the times and going shredding with friends.
So Doran, same question to you. Where does your snowboarding, origin story start? Bring me way back when, and what made you be motivated to try the sport and ultimately stick with it. Where now I think it's fair to say within the snowboard community, you and Chad are some of the most highly respected veterans.
Well, thank you. It started here in the Aspen area. I moved here in 1989, and I skied like Chad, and I skateboarded. So I skied and I skateboarded. I skied for 2 years, and then my dad came home from a garage sale with this old Burton, or not Burton, I think that's what my brother had. I had a GNU Chaos. So it was like a little beater board. And basically from that day on, there was nothing I wanted to do more. And so I figured out how to snowboard as much as possible and do some of the USASA contests. And that's where I met Chad, was at Nationals in Giants Ridge, Minnesota in, I believe, 1994, 95. And he was ripping. So we met there, and then literally have been friends since 94, 95. And he's easily one of my favorite people to snowboard with to this day.
Well, you mentioned that old USASA Nationals. Just curious if you wouldn't mind painting the picture. There might be a lot of viewers, here who, are familiar with what USASA Nationals is now. Paint the picture for me, what it was like back then in the early days, the frontier days of snowboarding. Chad, you can feel free to chime in, but maybe we'll start with Doran.
So, to get to Nationals was a big deal. That was actually literally my first year competing. So we made it to Nationals, like me and whoever else from this area. We all, flew out to Minnesota, and the hill there is like the size of a bunny hill. And, old school kind of hand dug half pipe, the slopestyle course was more jumps that resembled moguls than jumps today, and some funny rails. I remember there was a VW bug in the middle of the slopestyle course that you could jib or jump over, and it was awesome. It was like ultimate snowboarding freedom for a 15-year-old. So I wouldn't change a thing. It was great.
Chad, what are your memories of those early days of the snowboard scene?
Yeah, they were the same, you know. It was easier for me as myself to feel comfortable there because it was only 2 hours north of where I lived. So a lot like Doran and everybody else had to travel, and I couldn't imagine traveling to northern Minnesota from anywhere because it's like a cultural experience basically from wherever you go and or come from. But yeah, it was an amazing time. Like Doran said, we I remember meeting him there, and I know a lot of people we met there, and that sparked a future for everybody. You know, in my opinion, there's a lot of people. If you look at the list of that nationals in that article you did was crazy, and I think it's cool that today a lot of us are still shredding together. Like Doran said, it's like that's kind of why we still shred together too, because we're like friends from back then, and it's just easy to relate with people when you go out snowboarding. There's nothing you gotta like learn or talk about. You're just like, what up? Remember this time 20 years ago? And you're like, oh yeah, totally. Like it's just mindless and makes the times way better and more comfortable, and just keeps your friendship that much longer. But yeah, it's really cool to be able to talk about a time that happened 25 years ago like it was yesterday.
So, I think it's a good transition to kind of, chatting a little bit more about the film. But as Chad was alluding to there, and real quick, Doran or Chad, you could fill me in, but just to give the viewers an idea, Chad was on that start list and result list. Doran was on there. I believe Danny Cass was on there. Obviously, he went on to, win an Olympic medal, but not only that, be a huge part of the snowboard community. I believe Danny has now returned to Eagle County and is in the film At Home with the Homies with you guys, one of the early scenes. Then there's some other names on there as well that people, of course, would be familiar with. But yeah, is there anyone else forgetting? Just to give people an idea of like that results us looking back on it now. It's like, oh my gosh, look at all these guys. Is there anyone I'm missing?
Oh yes, the main one you're forgetting is Sean White. Jesse White, his brother, was in my age group in half pipe, and I'm going to give you some breaking news here. Sean White's mom tried to get me disqualified from the halfpipe competition for the final halfpipe day because I dropped in right when they said practice was closed. So they say practice is closed. I ratchet down my bindings real quick, drop in, do my last practice run, and I get to the bottom, and there's like a formal like protest saying you're disqualified because you dropped in. And I'm like, what the heck? And I found out it was from Sean's mom, and luckily we figured it out, and I didn't get disqualified. But it was funny for like something when you're 14 or 15 that shouldn't be very serious. They took it really serious, and Sean was like 10 and Jesse was 14. So yeah, so
Yeah.
Sean was the big name, and he made the most of everything. But Danny was there, Lane was there, Jesse Bertner, Ross Powers. Powers was there, right, Chad?
Yeah, I think Ross is there. He might have already been on the next level, but
Yeah, he
he was
might have
definitely
too.
right there on the edge. And
A lot of Olympians though.
but I know Kier Dillon was there. Yeah, definitely of all the Olympians, he was right on the edge of maybe getting out of USASA at that point. But what was he your age too,
Kier?
Ross, or was he my age? Yeah,
Yeah, I
I know
think Ross
Ross.
would be your age.
Yeah, so but Ross is there, Kier. I don't know. Like there's a bunch. It's a really cool time for sure.
Yeah,
So
a
But
lot of people made a lot of waves in snowboarding from that contest, and we all literally didn't know each other at all. Oh,
wow.
JJ Thomas was there too. He was in my group.
Yeah.
He ended up being, the Colorado Golden Boy.
yeah, and
And another story in Colorado is is Doran got the highest points out of anybody in that entire contest for slopestyle. So
I
technically, no
don't
matter
know.
what age group you were in or where you were, he beat every single person there, which was a pretty big feat.
Doran, do you remember what you did on the Volkswagen Bug feature? Like a literal Volks.
100%.
What was it? Go ahead. Yeah.
That was what sealed the deal. I ended up winning the slopestyle contest because I did whatever tricks I did, and then the bug was the last feature, and I pulled over, unstrapped, and did a 1-footer over the bug. And I remember JJ Thomas's mom thinking that I didn't know where the finish line was and that I was unstrapping early. And I really just pulled over, took 1 foot out, did a 1-footer, and rode through the finish. And that was that sealed the deal for me, the 1-footer.
You're not ribbing me, are you, Doran? That is what you did.
100%.
100%. Cool. Yeah, no, it's just funny. These days you go to something like a Dude Tour, you go to something like an X Games, and they have trucks or cars like underneath features. You literally had it like a car as a feature.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I did a method 1 foot over it.
I have photos of it. I could send you a photo.
I still do that trick.
I don't know about the but I
you
got
might
photos of
see.
the car.
Yeah. And just
That was
to fill.
kind of a thing back in the day, was to have a car in the course, and then
Yep.
contests got bigger, and then like car companies would sponsor the contest, and they'd put a car at the base, and they'd be like, "Don't jib the car." But I was actually a contest in Europe one time where Giggy and Roman rode over the car that they weren't supposed to be jibbing. But
Yes.
And I feel like till this day, that's the snowboard spirit. I mean, you watch a kid like Yo Aizawa out of Japan. You watch some of these guys dropping into an X Games snowboard knuckle huck. If something's there that you're not supposed to hit, they're going to hit it. That's kind of the snowboarder spirit. And I know Chad's a judge. I'm not sure if you judge too, Dorn, but I feel like even if the judges can't reward points for things like that, I'm not sure if you can or you can't. You guys, appreciate it. And just to follow up with viewers as we transition here, maybe into the next line of questioning, JJ Thomas, for those who may not know, hell of an athlete, competitor himself. Now he's one of the premier coaches. I believe he's Shaun White's half pipe coach, also coaches a lot of the high level half pipe guys. I think Jason Wool is a local guy, Frisco Winter Park, who works with JJ. So just wanted to fill that in there. And then just in terms of USASA Nationals, I think it's funny you guys bring it up because I think it's something that's true to this day. Within the snowboard community, you have like a spectrum of fans, parents, athletes, some who take it very seriously, like apparently Mrs. White did that day. I know I've chatted with some local Summit County medalists, and they and their families have mentioned similar kind of thoughts at USASA Nationals, like, the rhyme and reason to it, and some people taking it too seriously. But then why does a certain trick maybe not get rewarded points when it's clearly the best trick and there's certain rules? So it's just interesting. USASA Nationals, I think, has it brings the snowboard community together, and you really get these different types of people who are part of the community. I don't know, Chad, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was gonna say Shaun White's mom was maybe one of the first soccer moms in snowboarding.
There you go, snowboard mom. But I don't know if snowboard mom would be the right label. But anyway, transitioning to a little bit to the movie, I want to do that by chatting a little bit, and maybe Chad can start about the spirit of this movie, in the sense that you guys, like you guys were mentioning when we were chatting a little bit before we started the formal conversation, you went back to old snowboard film intros that featured you guys, and it seemed like were really trying to like get the spirit of who you guys were as snowboarders, and almost your journey along the ways, and really emphasizing I suppose like the OG nature of who you guys are. So rambling a little bit here, but in that spirit, Chad, for the viewers out there who aren't familiar with what Breck was in the early 90s, when you had guys like, Dale and his crew and some of those guys, snowboarding around town, would you mind painting the picture of the Breck snowboard scene, and more than that, like the jib scene and the guys who ushered that in the 90s, and that era and generation of snowboarding, and why it means so much to you guys, and why you tie it to this film?
The first era of jibbing, if you ask a lot of people, they say that it started in Breckenridge. Whitey will tell you that. A couple other people will tell you that. There's a crew of people from Minnesota they kind of ventured out to Colorado and then kept on moving west. But just the terrain in Summit County is pretty flat, and on the resort, it's a lot of blue-green runs, so there's not a lot of freestyle terrain. So they kind of took the street skating aspect and brought it to snowboarding, and that kind of blew up here in the early '90s through movies like Hard Hungry and the Homeless, and a bunch of old Whitey movies, and a couple other Justin Hosnick movies like Anthem and things like that, where they'd kind of go jibber around A Basin, they'd cut your nose and tail off of your board, and you'd take your high backs off and basically do everything you could to try to turn your snowboard into a skateboard. And that really resonated with a lot of people because, skateboarding and snowboarding were just kind of hand in hand at the time. Snowboarding hadn't gotten to the point where now I feel like it's a little almost more motocross because the jumps are so huge and the half pipes are so huge, and if you fall, you die. But in the park, anyways, where back then it was just kind of make something out of nothing, hit rails around town. It was very, the culture was very alive then, as far as that goes. Now it just seems like a very, there's still a snowboard culture around here in the backcountry and on the hill, but there's just so many tourists and people around now that it's hard to notice it, I guess you could say. But yeah, it was a very golden era for the jib scene. I think Nick Parada claims to have coined the word in the '80s, but I think the first era of real jibbing was the early '90s in Summit County, and then that just kind of spiderwebbed around the world.
Awesome. So Doran, maybe just connecting that to the film, how would you speak to your past, Chad's past, your homies past, and how that influenced the theme of this film?
Well, I think all of us are from, we're all basically around 40 years old, so we're all from that era. Like we watched all those guys and wanted to emulate them, and then so it's just in our DNA. And so we're kind of like maybe 2 generations after that first generation of like Summit County Vail jibbers. And so it's just like ingrained in us that we want to pay homage and have always wanted to shred like the guys who we looked up to when we were, in our formative years. So it just was organic. The film I made is just a bunch of guys who came up on that stuff. And so it's just how it is when you watch them as kids, and then you still try to jib around as 40-year-olds.
Awesome. So what do you think people who watch this film, which by the way is, free to watch on YouTube, that's one place they can check it out. I'm sure there's some other places. Doran, feel free to share if there's any other places they can find it, but I know YouTube they can. What do you think the snowboard community's takeaway, individual snowboarders' takeaway from this film will be?
Well, for sure, the response I've got is just it makes you want to go ride with your homies. Like it just shows that feeling of camaraderie and high-fiving your bros and hooting and hollering and taking some slams and riding some fun stuff. It's not a serious vibe, but it's like an energy that snowboarding needs, which is have fun and smile and don't take yourself too seriously. And that's kind of how we've been riding for more than most of our lives, basically, since all of us quit competing. And so it's just good that like that energy gets out there, that it's like, go out there, have fun. It's attainable. And you don't have to be on helicopters in Alaska to enjoy snowboarding and present it to the world. So, and if you want to watch it, Snowboarder Magazine, which is snowboarder.com, and Shredbots, shredbots.com, or Shredbots is YouTube.
So Chad, reflecting on the filmmaking process, and I don't know if you can speak to a specific scene or memory from the filmmaking process, but if there's one that singles out in your mind in terms of summarizing that riding with the homies experience, what memory is that you have from this filmmaking process that really speaks to that experience of, being at home with the homies?
Well, just to go on Doran, what Doran was saying about his movie, he basically, what I like to say too is he portrayed the feeling of snowboarding really well. Like we'd all go out to get that feeling and then hang out with our friends, and then it's fun to watch your friends get that feeling, like filming each other riding down hills. And he portrayed that really really well in the movie, I thought. But as far as my experience is just like there's a couple of shots in Summit County, but most of it's over in Aspen, and I lived over there for a couple of years, and I've been kind of going back and forth over the last few years, and just the feeling of being able to go over there and the anticipation of like having a good time with my friends, and just I don't remember one day. Any day you get out is a good day for the most part, as long as everything goes smoothly and you all get back safe. And I pretty much every single day I've ever gone out there has been one of the better times I've had shredding over the year. Just because of the fact we're going out with friends that I've shredded with for a long time, and that's kind of why I do it. I have a few friends over here that I still shred with too, a lot, but then I go over there as well. So, but there's no real specific memory. I just like, honestly, I like later in the year, March, April, May are my times to shred. Those 3 months are a good memory.
So Doran, Chad touched on it a little bit in Summit County, mostly over in the Aspen area. Obviously, don't want to have you give up your secret spots, honey holes, but where in general did you guys shoot, and why did you shoot in those spots? What kind of writing and I suppose filming were you gunning for here? Or was it kind of organic? Did it just kind of happen as you went?
Yeah, honestly, we don't really plan much. Um, Go where I think or we think the snow is going to be good. Typically, the Aspen backcountry, which is vast, there's tons of different access points, and we just go out, look for good snow, which for the most part has good terrain. And the cool thing is all of us have filmed video parts seriously many times. So we're all like workhorses. So we see something cool to ride. It doesn't take but a split second and somebody's up there getting it ready or we're riding it. And we happen to have cameras and GoPros and we just, film each other, and it usually sparks some sort of like energy where, oh, damn, like he did that. I want to go up there and try this, or I want to ride it this way. So there's rarely a plan. We just go out and it happens organically. And I guess that's what the film conveys.
So Chad, we only have a couple minutes here left, but thanks again for your time. Chad, we chatted several times in the past, and really what you described is what your current writing, at least part of your career, because obviously you do judging and other things, but the writing part of your career that you're really focused on right now is taking the terrain park to the high alpine. Do you feel this film is the best representation of you doing that, and also your friends doing that, of anything you've ever done? Chad, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, you're pretty correct on that. Honestly, like riding park is like kind of like going to the rock climbing gym and then going to the mountains and climbing a real mountain. But I don't know. I ride park a lot these days, early season, because there's nothing else to ride. But come February, I don't ride park at all anymore, really. Um, but it's a very good representation of the snowboarding I love and I want to do for the rest of my life for sure. Um, but like Doran said, we've all filmed video parts back in the day, and there was a lot of pressure and traveling that went along with those. So you never really got exactly what you wanted. But as far as Colorado goes, I'd say this 100% nailed it. Is one of the better projects I've ever been a part of. And we weren't even planning on it. I mean, Doran might have been, but I was just like, oh, like thinking we are kind of sitting on footage, and then seeing what Doran and Colin and Forrest had, and I was like, damn, like it actually really turned out. So he has a really good representation of snowboarding in Colorado and what we're all about for sure.
Before we're done here, I just have to say Chad is the GOAT. He's the best. His part is insane. If anybody could take the park to the POW, it's Chad, and his ender is mind-blowing. So go watch the film. Much love, and stoyach.